I think there's one where Brian brought us in pre-lease, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, where there was an initial offer made, and the government is asking for final offers.
We had made several offers. Yeah, we had been working on it for probably a year and a half, trying to chip away at this thing. But yes, so we were pre-award. Yeah, so during lease negotiation.
Yeah, so Brian called me up. I got a chance to meet the client, see the building, and as we talked about earlier, an ounce of preparations worth a pound of cure. Particular building has some deferred maintenance. It's about 20 years old, and it's had the government believe in it for the entire 20 years. I quickly saw the need to develop a phased capital improvement plan for the client because of the deferred maintenance and because of the way the lease is structured and having to have shell components ready to go. I saw that the cost to meet the shell requirements, especially seeing the government's list of concerns and priorities in the building, that could add up. So the first thing we wanted to do was assess the building. Even before that, we needed to have a partner that we could bring in to help us assess the building. And that is an architecture firm, Venture Architecture out of Denver, Colorado. That is kind of the third wheel and the third partner in this triumvirate of GSA specialties that came in to help assess. And they brought in their engineering team as well to look at the deferred maintenance and come up with a, kind of like I said, a three-phased approach of what do we have to do now? What is maintenance that absolutely has to happen right away before the building deteriorates to a point where it's just being too costly? What are things that need to be happening in the capital improvement plan, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? And what are the things that would be done post-award, right? Because every landlord is going to have a finite amount of capital that they can invest back into their building. And a lot of our clients take out construction loans in order to be able to provide the tenant improvement portion or the shell improvement portion of the lease. And so understanding how the capital outlay is going to work for a client is important, but then also making sure and understanding how this deferred maintenance issues were going to work and make the shell rent work is paramount to the success, because we haven't even made final offer on this project yet. And we found out recently that the GSA is basically told the lessor, we've been told not to work on this project anymore and to turn our attention elsewhere. As soon as we got that message, Brian and I hopped on the phone and said, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean for the agency that's in the building? What does that mean for our client? What is likely going to happen? Brian, I'll let you kind of talk about our conversation and what you thought the next steps were going to be for the client. And I can kind of talk about how we plan to move forward with that plan.
Yeah, there are multiple agencies in the building. There was a lot of hair on this that we're trying to articulate, obviously, going back to my Bigfoot analogy. But this is one of those situations where, they told us to stop. The lease expiration is impending. So we thought, how do we still get this to the finish line for the landlord so that not only do we have a Band-Aid at least for the lease term, but for the building as well. And not only just Band-Aid, but how do we make sure that this is going to stand the test of potentially years of an extension, if that's what it ends up turning into? So how do we make sure that this building is going to still be able to service at the highest level per the lease requirements, right? To meet the agency's needs so they can fulfill their mission. But yeah, that conversation, we thought about this long and hard and thought, my goodness, they're stopping all of this. There's still going to be an extension that has to happen. Not just going to let this go into holdover, especially with the agencies that are there and the importance of their missions. But also, how do we make sure that the landlord is protected as we move forward with that too? So we put together a whole plan on how are we going to service this still moving forward. Brought it to the landlord. They appear to have they've approved it, and so we're moving forward with trying to make sure that the building is still taken care of. So really back to the kind of preservation of the asset that we talked about earlier. How do we ensure that we're preserving the value of the asset and the income producing portion of that, which is the tenancy that's in place? We've put together a whole plan, as Matt discussed a second ago, that checks all those boxes to ensure that landlord is not stuck just because of the bulldozer that came through and eliminated all these staff and all these different leases. Make sure that doesn't eliminate this building and the value that this landlord needs to continue to preserve there. Amidst all of that chaos, I think we've added an advantage, right? That we've talked about before, added this advantage to make sure that we're doing right by the landlord and the tenant to make sure that they're not only going to be there for a long time, but they're in a space that works very well for them. It works financially for all parties. We would not have been able to do all of that without Beecher's expertise. As I mentioned earlier, we were chipping away at this thing for a year and a half. And it's like there'd be new things that would come up and then new things that would come up, new concerns. And so I, not being in this area where the project was, didn't have a great sense of what the issues were. And as Beecher came in, I mean, that expertise took not even a week, Matt, for you to understand all of the issues that were in place, the work that was needed for the actual building asset, and then quantifying those as well, and vetting some bids that we had received in the past to make sure if they're legit, if they're not, how to build that in, what's show, what's TI, and kind of helping to reinforce some of those conversations with the GSA and the tenant. So I think this one it's a success story of just the multifaceted approach that we have of having all the experts involved up front to be able to go in their own lanes and do their evaluations to make sure everything is in compliance with the lease in their different areas. We learn things all the time from architects, from PMs, from construction managers, GCs in this space about the lease and their perspective and how they view it, and also the nuance and the details that go along with that we're just not privy to. We're brokers. We're just the ogre-ish brokers over here who know how to get through and get to a lease to be executed. But how do you preserve the value of an asset? How do you run a building? How do you build certain things so that it is cost effective and it meets the needs of a tenant? Those are areas where experts absolutely have to be brought in, and experts who know how to navigate the construct of the GSA lease. And the personalities involved as well is a piece of it.
Brian and I, so, let's use this as an opportunity to take care of the immediate maintenance needs and help start to put some funds in place for the capital improvements that are going to need it to make the shell improvements that are going to be required whenever RLP comes out and final offer is made and lease is awarded and we get into post-award. Because that time extension is, I think we're all a little bit like, oh no, this is awful. But now we're looking at like, okay, here's an opportunity. I think the most rewarding part in these last couple of weeks with this particular situation happening is when Brian and I presented the plan to the lessor, to the landlord, and she was like, yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Let's do that. Get Venture out here, get Beecher out here, come assess the building. You're 100% right. We have some deferred maintenance. We have some things that we need to get taken care of. And the other thing that I was really pleased to hear is she said, we really want to be prepared that when the RLP comes out and we make our final offer, that we know that we can execute and deliver on what's in that lease. So yes, we want to keep moving forward. We want you to come out. We want to do the assessment. We want to plan as if everything is going the way it was planned to go. I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about that mentality that landlord has. These are tough times for landlords of government space, but if you can kind of keep that mentality of, okay, how can we look at this a little bit differently, or how can we reposition the asset, or how can we take advantage of this, be good partners with the agency that's in your building, which our landlord is doing right now. There's opportunity to be had because the dust will settle. And at the end of the day, the government needs space. So put yourself in a position to rent it to them. With the impacts of DOGE, the impacts of having less people available on the GSA lease execution side. We have, between ARCO and Beecher, we have a handful of projects that have entered into for different reasons, entered into some troubled waters, I guess I'll say. Agency versus GSA discrepancies, trying to get out of a lease, agency not having the personnel to be able to warrant having a lease and asking for a buyout, an RLP that we thought was imminent being delayed, that's creating an extension situation for a lessor, for one of our clients. And I think, at least for me, from my perspective as kind of the post-award project manager, design construction guy here, I always, in each one of those instances, I thought to myself, all right, well, I guess we're done, and the brokers and the attorneys will take it from here. And pretty much not the opposite happened, but I definitely got brought into the fold more than I thought I would be, because we ended up talking about how much cost got put in. What is the value of the lease? What are the value of the operating costs for vacancy? What were the man hours that were put into this from the GC or from the project manager? What is the value of the lease, and how do we get out of that? And how do we defend these costs? I think that's one thing that we're seeing that we probably, at least if I had any message for lessors that are going through this process now, is knock on wood, I hope that you get through the post-award, you get through design and construction, and you get that lease commenced. But if you're wary that they're taking too long, or that you think that they might try and get out of the lease, find a GSA specializing attorney to help you, and call ARCO or somebody like that to help you understand that process and be able to defend your position. And I use that a lot when I talk to owners, architects, contractors. Give me a defensible position, right? So be able to defend your position. Don't just say, well, I think my lease is worth $1 million. Go through all of it. It takes time, but go through all of it. How did you come up with the shell rent? How did you come up with operating costs? You're not amortizing the TI into the rent anymore, but that loss of rent income is a loss of value. You have all your design costs, you have your brokerage costs, you have your preparation costs, you have all these things that were happening and need to get done. And then on the project where we have the potential lease extension, we're looking at that as how can we put the lessor in a prime position to make the most out of the offer when it comes out by making the agency happy during this lease extension and doing improvements to the building that would be eventually required in the shell for the future offer. So always kind of looking for ways to leverage where you're at, not necessarily take advantage, but just don't make sure that you're not leaving anything in the table. Make lemonades out of the lemons. What's going on out there right now. My last message is for lessors and landlords.